Hi, this is Chatterboxing. I'm Sean. I want to talk in this video about James Degale and Chris Eubank Jr. and their fight coming up here. I'm not entirely sure when it is, but I know it's soon enough. Now, I like this fight. For me, I think it has the potential to be a very, very entertaining one. I like the style matchup. I like the fact they don't really like each other. It's been going back and forth for a while. Domestic fights are always good in the UK. It's going to be very big over here. I don't know how big it's going to be around the world, but I'd imagine it will be quite a lot of interest to boxing fans all around the world, really. James Degale, especially being a former world champion, very well known. Eubank, being relatively well known. So yeah, I think it's got all the ingredients to be a pretty good one. I actually quite like the timing of it as well, to be honest. I think that's going to give add a little extra spice to it. Like James Degale called it, where he was saying, "Oh, we should call this sort of," I can't remember what he said, like the loser should retire, something along them lines. Basically, James Degale is at a point now where his sort of stock in boxing, his reputation, not necessarily his reputation, but how he's perceived in terms of as a sort of elite level fighter, isn't particularly high. Now, a few years ago, he was widely considered to be the number one super middleweight in the world. Most people probably would have told you that. And then the fight he had with Badou Jack was the decider, really, to see who was the top boy at super middleweight. Now, I picked Degale to win that fight, but in my opinion, Badou Jack got robbed, really, in that fight. I think he clearly won. They called it a draw, but I couldn't see it as a draw at all. I thought Badou Jack was the clear winner. James Degale took a lot of punishment in that fight. And since then, obviously, he's lost it to Truax. He beat him in a rematch. But, you know, his stock has sort of gone down, and people don't really... I mean, he gave up his title. He didn't want to fight the mandatory. So people at this stage in his career, he just wants... basically like sort of big fights with big money, and that's understandable. I mean, he's obviously been around a lot, he's travelled, he's fought a lot of tough opponents, had a tough career. But I think for this one, you're going to see a big improvement in him. Now, the Caleb Truax, people didn't really know who he was. It was supposed to be a sort of tune-up fight, really. So I don't know how seriously he took him. This one's going to be different. He's not going to want to be embarrassed by Chris Eubank, especially not at home. I think James Degale's natural personality, at least in terms of boxing, he's quite arrogant, that he's sort of the man, he's head and shoulders above everyone else. And you can tell that, not just by the way he speaks, but by the way he fights sometimes. So I don't think he particularly respects Eubank. I think he's going to... Well, I don't think he really respects him in the sense that he doesn't want to lose to someone like Eubank. He doesn't see Eubank as someone like on the level that he should be losing to. But at the same time, he'll respect him enough to prepare himself well for the fight. And you'd hope that he'd been around long enough and have learnt enough lessons than to do that. So I do think you're going to see an improvement in him, but I do think we have seen the best of him. Now in terms of Chris Eubank, now he looked very good early on in his career, just sort of bashing up the kind of British level. Well, I mean, before he fought Billy Joe Saunders, he hadn't even really fought a British level. He just fought like a load of journeymen and, you know, just nobodies, really. He looked quite flashy doing that. Then he fought Billy Joe Saunders. And it was a close fight, to be fair. I mean, I think he got a bit of stage fright. He obviously didn't have much experience, wasn't used to fighting someone, not just someone that was as skillful and as crafty, but also someone who's really coming to win. Because all the people he'd fought before then were really just people who'd sort of, you know, flown over from wherever just to basically get a pay to get beaten up. This was when he was actually fighting a proper opponent in a proper event. So that got to him, and it was still a close fight. Now, Billy Joe Saunders is arguably, I suppose you could, I mean, he's definitely in the conversation for the number one pound for pound fighter in the UK. I mean, he'd be in the top 3 easily, most people's lists, I think. So, you know, a lot of very, very good fighters are going to lose to Billy Joe Saunders. Not that much shame in that. Then he started fighting like British level, European level. He's very dominating, really, at that level. Fringe world, and then he fought against George Groves, who was you know, a seasoned professional world champion, very, very good fight. Again, one of the best fighters in the country, in the world, really, super middleweight at least. And a lot of people, most people, were picking Eubank to beat Degale. I mean, to beat Groves. I wasn't. I was one of the few people who wasn't. I thought that the style that matched up in Groves' favour if he used the tools that he had, and he did. And I think he has two things really that that James Degale doesn't have in terms of this fight. First of all, he's got much more discipline. Now, he can fight to a very disciplined game plan, which is what he needed to do against Eubank. Second of all, he's got tools that James Degale doesn't have. Like, first of all, he's a much harder puncher, and the way he fights, he can just basically keep Eubank at bay. He can move in and out with his feet. He's got good, quick feet, so he can, when Eubank lunges in like he does, he can just sort of move out of the way and just counter him with that right hand, keep the middle of the ring, stay disciplined, and just have, just sort of deter Eubank from doing what he likes to do. Someone like James Degale, he doesn't have those things, and he quite often finds himself on the ropes, which is the last place you want to be with Eubank. He gets sort of caught up in the moment. Now, the way George Groves beat Eubank was basically came out straight away into the centre of the ring. Now, Eubank obviously coming up from middleweight. George Groves is a big bloke. Fought at super middleweight his whole career. Big for a super middleweight, strong, hard puncher. Tall, he's just bigger than Eubank. Do you know what I mean? Came into the middle of the ring, kept him behind that jab, big right hand behind it, and just pretty much sort of intimidated Eubank quite a lot throughout that fight. And as I say, very importantly, had that discipline to just stick to doing what he needed to do. Because Eubank's quite basic. Do you know what I mean? It's not like he's particularly fancy. He doesn't even have a trainer. So, I mean, he does now apparently, but do you know what I mean? It's not difficult to sort of outthink and outmaneuver Chris Eubank, especially if you've got the power and the experience that George Groves had. I don't think James Degale has those tools. Now, he may have other tools, but for me, I think Chris Eubank is the favourite going into this, all things considered. Now, to be honest with you, even a few years ago when James Degale was at the top of his game, I still think Chris Eubank would have been a very, very tough fight for him, much tougher than he would be for George Groves. Now, Chris Eubank likes to basically get inside you, get you onto the right and just pummel you, work rate. He's going to hit you with uppercuts, hooks, 35,000 punch combinations, you know what I mean? And just outwork you. I don't see James Degale really being able to keep up with that sort of style. To be honest with you, I think James Degale, he'll kind of move around. He's got pretty poor balance as well, Degale, and footwork. I mean, he's kind of moving in and out of different stances, but you quite often see him squared up. He gets sort of caught between it. He doesn't really keep people off him. Do you know what I mean? He'll throw his jab, but you don't really see him like George Groves was able to throw that jab, just keep him away, because there's not only the strong jab, but also that right hand behind it. You very often see James Degale, he'll sort of throw that and people will just come into him quite close. Do you know what I mean? And he doesn't really manage to hold them off. So I see him really struggling with Eubank, or keeping Eubank at range. Eubank obviously doesn't want to fight at range. He wants to get in close. So I think the style of Eubank is going to be very difficult for him. You saw against Caleb Truax, he was, taking a lot of punches, especially in that first fight. He's taking big punches back on the ropes, and he really struggled to get off there. He doesn't particularly have he's quite flashy, Degale, at times, and he can look better when he does things well than the reality of the effectiveness of it, if that makes any sense. So sometimes you see him and you think, wow, that looks good, but in terms of over 12 rounds, it's not particularly effective in managing to keep someone away from him. So I see Chris Eubank getting on top of him and really outworking him. Now, in terms of is there going to be a stoppage, I don't think. I mean, both of them are very, very tough. I mean, Chris Eubank took some big punches from George Groves, who's a much harder puncher than James Degale. Didn't really put him off. I mean, it put him off, but it didn't put him off completely. Do you know what I mean? It didn't particularly hurt him. It didn't put him off trying to get to him. It may have put him off being reckless, the sort of recklessness that he uses to sort of overwhelm people. But I don't see James Degale particularly doing that much damage to him. He's going to hit him a few times. He might stun him here and there, but I don't see him putting enough of a dent in Chris Eubank to put him down or knock him out. And I don't see him having the work rate to really wear him down either. So I'd be very, very surprised if James Degale managed to knock out Chris Eubank. In terms of Chris Eubank knocking out James Degale, again, I'd be quite surprised. I mean, you've seen James Degale take a lot of punches. I mean, unless it's just an accumulation of a lot of the punishment that he's taken in his career. But you saw the beating he took off Badu Jack. And not only was he able to take that, but at the end he was still going for it. And even after the interview, he would have had a punch up there and then, like in the ring. He had about 2 teeth left. And he was still like kind of quite hyped up, like ready to go again. Do you know what I mean? So you got to be, I mean, to stop James Degale, it's going to take someone who's a lot more powerful than Chris Eubank, in my opinion. So I see it going to the cards, but I see Chris Eubank really sort of dictating the way the fight's going. He's obviously younger, fresher. He's going to have more energy. Now, Chris Eubank, James Degale is obviously fit. That's probably like the one. Not the one, but like the main asset that Jim McDonnell has as a trainer. But I don't think he's going to be as fit as Eubank, all things considered. He doesn't have the freshness about him as much as anything else, just all the punishment that he's taken, all the miles on the clock. And I think they're both obviously going to be very determined to win. I think that's just their nature. When you add to the equation that they're both British, there's a kind of territorial aspect. They don't like each other. Neither of them are going to back down. So I see it going to be an all-action, great fight. Really, I do see it being very good. But I just think Eubank is going to outwork him. I think this is his moment to get a good marquee name on his record, because he's fought against 2 top-level opponents and he's lost to both. I think this time, this is his chance to really go for it, and I think he's going to do it. Now, it's going to be interesting to see him now for the first time with a trainer. Now, he does little bits and pieces of work with Floyd Mayweather Senior here and there, but to have someone who actually supposedly is going to listen to, an actual pair of eyes outside to say to him, look, you need to start doing more of this. He's trying to do that, whatever, but just having like an extra person with him to try and give him that little bit extra. In terms of the preparation as well, I mean, you saw against Groves, and you saw him against Saunders as well. He's just lunging in, doesn't really set up punches very well. He just relies on overwhelming people. Now, against someone of the calibre of James Degale, that's obviously going to be more difficult than a lot of the people he's fought. But I do think that James Degale, as I said earlier, I don't think he's the best at like positioning himself in the ring. And the amount of times he gets like, squares his feet up and stuff like that, trying to like switch stances, I can see Eubank, being able to capitalise. But it's going to be interesting because it could be a case of some trainer comes in and that negates from his style. We don't know. He tries to get him doing stuff that he's not really comfortable with. He's like second guessing himself. The things that he's good at, he's not really using to full extent in the fight. We'll see. But I think personally that Chris Eubank is going to win, and I think he's going to go 12 rounds. Obviously, as we get closer to it, we can see more of the build-up, and that might change. But as of right now, I'm thinking that Chris Eubank on points. So yeah, let me know what you lot think, and thank you very much for watching.